Welcome to A Dram of Outlander. This is Desiree, your podcaster and the writer for ADramofOutlander.com. For all things Outlander, from the Dinah Gabaldon book series to the Stars TV series and everything in between. This is episode 83, The Scottish Prisoner, week 15. Hello! I hope this finds you very well indeed. It has been a great week around here. And as I sometimes say, another week, another podcast. So let's jump right in. I received a lovely email from a listener named Verid, and she was hoping somebody would do The Scottish Prisoner, and here we are. She has some good insights, and there's a few things she's waiting for that are really exciting in this book. Thank you for listening, Verid. I appreciate your comments. So now we're into section 4, and it's titled A Tithe to Hell. Chapter 29, The Wild Hunt. So John and Jamie, and wee Tom, I presume, have returned from their escapades into Ireland. It was a terrible boat trip, and even John had been sick along the way. They both were unwashed, unshaven, and smelled strongly of vomit. And so John was trying to keep himself together, and he was thinking of a poem. If you can hold on to your stomach when all about you are losing theirs. And then he starts thinking about Harry Quarry and his poetry. And he's trying to come up with a rhyme for it, and all he can think of is boozing lairs. But then he starts thinking of boozy places of drunken, sweating, cohabitating humanity, combined with the reek of his companions and the coach's jolting, and he was queasy all over again. Mind your thoughts, John. Take your thoughts captive, and you might be better. And he knows he has to talk to his brother Hal, and it makes him even queasier still. So it's about sunset when they reached Arga's house, Hal and Minnie's home. And there's quite a bit of noise surrounding them. And Minnie comes out, and she's pretty disturbed by how they look. She forbids them to say anything. She rings for footmen and chambermaids, orders brandies and baths all around. I like Minerva's style. I'm sure they stink to high heaven and must be horrendous. John asks if Hal is in, and he happens to be in the house making a speech. And she said she'll send a note to get him to come back, and shoos John away. A little while later, John is clean and mostly sober, even though he's had quite a bit of brandy. He comes down to the drawing room, and he can hear Jamie Fraser and Minnie talking. And they're cozily sitting together, talking. And they both look up at him, and they have an air of conspirator about them. So I'm sure Jamie is trying to explain how he couldn't keep John from 12 Trees, that he stumbled upon him, and all the hell that broke loose. And that he did give John a bit of information, but didn't say where it came from. So John could not even be concerned about what Jamie and Minnie might be up to. Here comes Hal, and he's dressed for the House of Lords. He collapses into a chair, and he pries his red-heeled shoes off. And he's relieved. The butler takes them away, and Hal examines a hole in his stocking. He says that there were no carriages or wagons available, so he had to walk. And he has a blister on his heel the size of a pigeon's egg. Ouch. And he tells John that blister looks better than he does. What the devil happened? So Gray decides to launch into his diatribe about all the things that happened. He kept it as succinct as possible, and Jamie provided details as needed. When they got to the part about Siverly attacking Jamie Fraser, Hal twitched just a bit at the lips. And then, when he heard about John's 2 visits to Siverly's estate, he was a little bit alarmed. It sobered him, it says. Good God, John. And then he says to John, so you escaped from Athlone Castle and fled Ireland suspected of murder? You do realize that the justiciar will recognize you from your description. Hal doesn't even know the half of it. Like, they're giving him information, but he definitely was not there. John wasn't very worried about it at the time. So Gray continues to tell Hal what happened, and he brings out those half-charred pages that Jamie had retrieved from the fire. And then he gives him the list of names that are showing on the back of that one page. Hal picks it up and he whistles between his teeth and says something in German. That's quite offensive. Remember, Minnie doesn't allow them to curse in English in the house, so they can only curse in foreign languages. So they start going down the list of names. And John sees one holds a commission, but the others are probably easy to find. And they decide to proceed carefully and put Harry on the names and quietly go about their business. Most are Irish, so they have to, again, carefully look at the Irish brigades. He doesn't want to offend them. And 12 Trees, well, John points out that 12 Trees already knows he's under suspicion. And they're trying to figure out what to do with him. Do they approach him directly or not? Yeah. And Hal is wondering who's going after him. Jamie, maybe? Or John himself in disguise? It's not like either of them is really inconspicuous, right? Not at all. John says he's going to let Hal do it. And as he's talking to him, he's trying to pour some more brandy, but his hands are shaking terribly and he spills some. He's very tired. So Hal's talking to Mr. Beasley, who's under his charge, and they pull up the names of the O'Higginses and see if they can put them to use, trying to find any information out. They're sort of rabble-rousers, not very civilized. And if they want to do something that might not be totally legal, the Higginses are the ones to call. The O'Higginses, I mean. Being Irish doesn't necessarily imply treasonous proclivities, Hal said. They were certainly helpful with regard to Bernard Adams. Yes. So John leans back and he agrees. And now Minnie jumps into the action. She's been quiet this whole time. And she clears her throat and asks about Major Siverly. He's dead. Were you not listening, Minerva? I'm sure Minnie has some wicked side eye or wicked evil eye, and she gives it to John. And she says, but did you not begin with this Hegira with the intent of bringing him to justice and making him account publicly for his crime? What is an Hegira, you ask? Well, one definition has to do with Muhammad departing from Mecca to Medina in AD 622. The other meaning of Hegira is an exodus or migration, which is interesting because I'm not quite sure how that word fits into here. Normally it makes great sense, but John went to Ireland, is she calling that an exodus? Is she calling that a migration? I don't know. It's kind of challenging, this one, because I know it's not about Muhammad. So then John asks, can you court-martial a dead man? And she knows of one case. And this gets Hal's distinct attention, and he stops eating the fruitcake. And she brings up Percy, John and Hal's stepbrother. And the point is, there can be a posthumous court-martial. A man's deeds live after him and all that. But then they say that the record that's provided to have a posthumous court-martial has to have stunning peccability. The quality or state of being peccable, capable of sinning. So it has to be somebody has to show that their behavior has been atrocious. That has to go on record. Well, they could probably do that with Siverly. John says he's never heard of such a thing. And he looks over out of the corner of his eye at Jamie, and Jamie's examining a crumpet. That's his way of saying, I'm not involved, I'm not answering, I'm not paying attention. Oh, this crumpet is so exciting. I've never seen one like this before. Good show, Jamie. Well, and the other aspect of that is that Jamie's the only other person besides John who knows the truth about Gray's relationship with his stepbrother. Well, it seems like only one other time someone has been court-martialed after death. But that's precedent, according to Minnie. That's what she thinks, at least. So Hal is thinking, they're all kind of mulling this over. Well, they could. They could bring it to the judge advocate's office. And it brings it to a public arena. And then they can explore Siverly's relationship with Edward Twelvetrees or anything else that they'd want to. At this, Hal begins to laugh. Minnie, my dear, you are a pearl of great price. Well, yes, I am. Captain Fraser, would you care for more tea? Minnie, I think, of the bunch, she's as calculating and as smart as Jamie. I think she outwits Hal and John. She's an amazing woman. I would love to see her come to life. Oh, my goodness. Now, next scene, break. So, remember Thomas Lally, the one who helped Jamie translate Irish poem originally, and he also left out the Stuart Rose. And so his official title is Thomas Comte de Lally, Baron de Tollendal. So he was lodged in a private house. Remember, he's a prisoner of the crown, too. Jamie got the information from Minnie. She didn't ask him why, and they left it at that. The only other thing, and he didn't ask her why, she wanted to know if he had spoken to Edward Twelvetrees and if he had mentioned the name Raphael Waddeswade. Jamie was wondering who this Waddeswade was, but he made no mention to John or to Hal. He and Minnie, if they're going to trust each other and keep confidences, he's good with that. This is Jamie's incredible ability to stand on a line, a razor's edge, and be able to honor all the different things he needs to honor and keep those chess pieces moving properly. He did ask Minnie if she had heard of Tobias Quinn, and she hadn't. So, is Quinn in London? We'll see. He's pretty sure that Quinn is in London, but he would be keeping low. But if he's using that Druid Cup as inspiration, there might be rumors floating around. So Jamie walked through the streets, and it felt very strange. And now he's being here alone. He used to have men that he commanded and those who sought him, networks of information. At one time, he could have put word out and found a man like Quinn easily. Once he could do that. So he tries to get that thought away from himself, that part of his life was over. He made up his mind, and that was that. He wasn't turning back. And it frustrates him why those thoughts are still coming. And then he mutters to himself, because you've still to finish it, Clotheed. I love the phrase Clotheed. He knew he had to find Quinn, whether it was to stop the Irish Brigade's plot before it started or for the sake of Quinn. He doesn't know what he's going to do, but he knows he must find him. And now he's on the hunt for Thomas Lally. But he knows that Lally still has connections, followers, informants. He listens and plans. Lally has not given up, and this makes Jamie feel a little bitter. Jamie hasn't given up. He simply knows the future. And as I said in the last podcast, I think if Jamie didn't know the future, he would be on board with this. And he would, in a heartbeat, commit treason and join this because the plan was pretty solid. So Jamie just shows up on Thomas Lally's doorstep. He knew it was the best way was to surprise him with the visit. Jamie walked. Nobody followed him anymore. They were too busy with the members of the Wild Hunt. And where else was he going to go? He had limited prospects. Like Jamie could get picked up at the drop of a hat. And he was wondering how long it would take before they found one of those men. And they would talk. And Jamie says, Lally opens the door himself, and Jamie's surprised. And Lally was surprised to see Jamie. He offers him to come in. Jamie was expecting him to have a servant or maybe some type of assistant. Jamie says he's alone, and Lally says he's alone as well. And as Jamie's looking around this room, it's not orderly. There's food dishes. The hearth is unswept. It feels neglected. And Lally explains that a servant has left, and he asks if he can offer him an ale. He doesn't have a lot. He's living very sparsely. Jamie says yes and thanks him. This is no time to refuse hospitality. So Lally pushes aside dirty dishes, green cheese rinds, a dead cockroach, and Jamie wonders if it had died of starvation or poisoning. So Lally seems like he's in a bit of a despair. So Lally asks him, after they have some pleasantries, if Jamie found the Wild Hunt. And he says the English think they have, though it may be naught but a mare's nest. Lally was staying reserved, but his interest was piquing. And he says that he heard Jamie went to Ireland with Lord John, and he hasn't seen it in many years. Is it still green then and beautiful? Wet as a sponge bath and mud to the knees, but aye, it was green enough. Lally laughed at this, and Jamie thought, Thomas does not laugh easily or often. He explains that he was obligated to go with Lord John. But there was another companion, an unofficial one. Do you remember Tobias Quinn? Of course Lally remembered Quinn. But he stayed calm and questioning. Yes, from the Rising. He was one of the ones who came with O'Sullivan. So they're gently discussing the situation. And Jamie throws out the Druid King's cup and asks if Lally has heard of it. He says no, but Jamie knows he's lying. He asks him if he's seen it then, and if he had, it means he's seen Quinn. And he knows that Quinn would surrender it to no man except for Charles Stuart. And Jamie says, I need to speak with him. He tries to express to Thomas that it's a matter of urgency, of safety for Quinn. Can he get word to him? And Lally now is suspicious of Jamie's intent and says meet him and betray him to the English. It hurt Jamie's feelings a little bit. It bothered him that Lally would think he would do this. He doesn't know if he can trust Jamie. He says he knew many men that he thought he knew. He doesn't know who he can trust, or if anyone's trustworthy at all. Jamie understands that because he feels the same way. but he has come in trust and regard to Thomas Lally. So what's going on with this scheme? What are they going to do? And they're having all this internal dialogue that they're not sharing with each other. And Jamie formally gets up and addresses Thomas. And he says, Quinn will maybe have told you what he said to me, and I to him. If not, ask him. I said it not from cowardice, not from treachery, nor unwillingness to stand with friends and comrades. I said it from sure knowledge. You kent my wife, the Sassenach woman. La Dame Blanche, they called her in Paris, and for a good reason. She saw the end of the cause, and its death. Believe me, Thomas, this venture too is doomed, and I ken that fine. I wouldna have it take you down with it. For the sake of our shared past, I beg you stand clear. So Jamie knows he can't join something he would join if he didn't have foreknowledge. He knows it's doomed. He's again on that razor's edge of he's obligated under that damn oath to the crown. But he's going to do whatever he can to save people, to keep them from dying, getting in harm's way, getting this plot underway. Lally is stuck. If he doesn't get sent back to France and clear his name, what is there for him? Why not try? Jamie didn't have an answer. He knew that Lally lived at the behest of his captors just as Jamie did. Who wouldn't be tempted at the possibility of regaining his life? Jamie's helpless here. But Thomas doesn't want Jamie to worry about him and calls him old comrade. And he assures Jamie that when the Marquise of Pelham comes back, that she will take care of him and not let him starve because she has tenderness toward him. So this is Jamie being the political. He's so good at this. He was not born to be laird. He was a second son. He was born to do something different. Be a soldier, work the land for his brother, to do something else. Yet, he rose to that title and he rose to that end with his savvy political ability, with his quick wit, with his utter depth of practicality that allows him to see how things are, his willingness to accept reality for what it is, and then work around it, work through it, work with it for his own ends or ends that he has agreed to follow and get to. He's an amazing mind. And he's passionate and he cares. And he can't flippantly turn his back on something that his heart is called toward, to people that he knows. And even those he doesn't know, but he doesn't want to see them have those bitter ends like after Culloden. So everyone's trying to work their little sphere. The names on that Wild Hunt poem sheet are being sought after. They're enlisting the help of the O'Higginses and Harry Quarry. And we still don't have full understanding of what the heck 12 Trees was really doing. Was he really a traitor? But was he? Was he already working a scam on Siverly? Was it like two different U.S. agencies going after a perpetrator, but yet they don't talk to each other, so you have no idea? So the local police show up to arrest them, but the FBI has said they've had a guy on the inside for 5 years, and they're going to blow it. They're going to blow the case if they continue. It's starting to smell a lot like that, but we'll see. Chapter 30, Particular Friends. So we see what Harold's title is. Hal. Harold, Duke of Pardloe, Colonel of the 46th Foot. He visits the Judge Advocate's office in an official manner. They go to file the necessary documents. They're asking for a posthumous general court-martial of Major Siverly. And the charges are from theft, corruption, failure to suppress mutiny, to willful murder, and treason. Serious charges. So after they're there for hours and discussing it with the judge advocate, it is decided that the court-martial will proceed at once, and there will be the charge of treason added. Now, I don't know what this means for Siverly's family. Does this mean that his lands are seized and they become the crown's? That would make sense because Ireland was under rule. So his widow would get nothing. All his lands would be gone. Any property, any money, titles, it's all seized and goes away. And they've also been able to identify from that list of the Wild Hunt 6 or so who could be watched carefully. And when they hear about the court-martial, will they run? How will they act? Will they seek out others in the plot? It would take about a month before the court-martial could convene, so there's quite a bit of time ahead of them. But they can't just wait patiently. So John invites Jamie to go with him to a race meeting in Newmarket. 2 days later, they stop at the Beefsteak, where they took rooms and they were going to dine and change before going to a play that evening. So they had some nice plans. So they had decided during their time together, they were not going to talk about Ireland, Siverly, 12 Trees, court-martials, or poetry. Definitely not Harry Quarry's poetry. But this was unspoken. They had both just steered widely clear of those things. John describes Jamie as being quiet, sometimes withdrawn, but he was relaxed in the presence of horses. And this helped John relax a little bit. He was the one who had arranged for Jamie's parole at Hellwater because of the horses, and he could be outside. He knows Jamie wasn't content or isn't content as a prisoner, but he hopes he's not totally unhappy either. Am I right to treat him thus? He wonders as he watches Fraser as Jamie walks into the dining room ahead of him. Will it give him something to remember, to recollect with pleasure when he goes back, or only increase the bitterness of his position? God, I wish I knew. It's torturing John. See, John is on this really strange plane of existence where he knows that Jamie's his equal, or even perhaps a higher station than he is. Like, Jamie would be equivalent to what Hal is at this point because he's the first son since his brother died. He's educated, he was a landowner, etc., right? And John struggles with keeping him a prisoner. He struggles with lowering Jamie's station and keeping him there. But yet John feeds into that at the same time. He doesn't always recognize that he's treating Jamie less than. Sometimes he does, and he feels terrible about it, but he still does it. He stands to give up a lot if Jamie's parole is ended and he becomes free. He will have no reason to see him. That's what he thinks. He will have no connection to him. And he will have no power over Jamie. And he struggles with that power differential, but yet it suits his needs and it suits his personality and it suits his desire for Jamie. And it fulfills that. So it's this embattlement that he goes through all the time. Could he be pardoned? Meaning Jamie, could he be pardoned at this point, knowing there's a fresh Jacobite conspiracy afoot, or likelihood of one? And John is just walking and thinking. He is not paying attention to anything around him. And then all of a sudden he hears Edward Twelvetree's voice. He's in the billiards room. Twelvetrees looks up, and things are getting busy now. The person that Twelvetrees had been playing billiards with looked astonished and bewildered. And this was somebody that John knows. It's Major Berkeley Tarleton. They go back. They know each other. Twelvetrees is now totally white. He's seen his summons to the court-martial. And of course he has to have some sort of trash talk toward John, and he calls him an unspeakable whelp. I don't think Twelvetrees is very good at trash talking. He is really poor, generally, at giving attitude. At this, Gray bows, and he says, "Your servant, sir." And Twelvetrees narrows his eyes, seeing Jamie come up behind John. And he has nothing good to say to Jamie. All he says is, "And you." "I wonder at it, sir. Indeed, I wonder at it. Who would bring such as this fellow, this depraved Scotch creature, a convicted traitor, into the sacred precincts of this club?" And he's holding the cue, clutching it like a quarterstaff. Do you think Jamie's going to handle this very well? "Captain Fraser is my particular friend, sir." Twelvetrees has an ugly laugh at this. "I dare say he is. A very close friend, I have heard." And he sneers. "What do you imply, sir?" This was Jamie talking. And Twelvetrees looks at Jamie's face. "Why, sir, since you are so civil as to inquire, I imply that this arsewipe is not merely your most particular friend, for surely only the loyalty of a bedfellow can have led him to do your bidding." Twelvetrees has elevated his trash talk. This has turned into an episode of Jerry Springer. And if you don't know who Jerry Springer is, there used to be these daytime talk shows on where it turned into table flipping, chair tossing, total incredible craziness for the rest of us to sit and watch. It was mayhem. All of a sudden, John realizes, as he's having all these things exploding in his head, he knows that Twelvetrees wants to provoke him. He knows that he wants to goad him. And he knows he's trying to get him to challenge him. He also knows that Twelvetrees just called him a sodomite in public. He means to discredit him, and now I'll have to kill him. Yes, John is a wee bit more rash than Jamie is. I have to kill him now. I don't know if that will take away the memory of what Twelvetrees said in public, but it also plays into the fact that John believes he can never lose a duel, right? So the other man there, Tarleton, is trying to calm things down. He's trying to get everybody to simmer. And John says to Twelvetrees, "You bloody murderer." And Twelvetrees, yeah, well, again, he's elevated his game. "You what? Fucking sodomite." And he's holding on to that cue stick so tight his knuckles are white. And then Jamie reaches and puts his hand on John's shoulder and drags him out of the way. He steps in front of him. He reaches across the table and plucks the cue right out of Twelvetrees' hands, just like it was broom straw. And then, though with effort, he breaks it into two and lays it on the table. So why is Jamie putting himself squarely in focus of Twelvetrees? Why is he putting the big bullseye target on his head? And he calmly says to Twelvetrees, "Do you call me traitor, sir? I take no offense at this, for I stand convicted of that crime. But I say to you that you are a greater traitor still." 12 Trees is a bit stunned. You speak of particular friends, sir. Your own most particular friend, Major Siverly, faces a posthumous court-martial for corruption and treason of a most heinous kind. And I say that you should be tried along with him, for you have been partner to his crimes. And if justice is served, doubtless you will be. And if the justice of the Almighty be served, you will then join him in hell. I pray it may be swift. Now Tarleton, the other man in the room, he makes sort of a gobbling noise that may have been funny under other circumstances to John. 12 Trees is frozen, eyes bulging, face contorting and convulsing, and then he leaps on the table and launches himself at Jamie Fraser. Jamie dodges aside. 12 Trees struck him, no more than a glancing blow, and he falls to the floor at John's feet. He's in a crumpled heap for a moment, and he's panting. No one tries to help him. And then he gets up and straightens his clothing and walks towards Jamie. And Jamie at this point has moved into the hall. 12 Trees reaches Jamie and then draws back his arm and slaps him across the face with a sound like a pistol shot. Ouch, number one. Let your seconds call upon me, sir. And out he goes. They parted like the waves of the Red Sea for 12 Trees. He was ramrod straight and eyes fixed straight ahead. So Major Tarleton is standing here, and he gives Jamie the handkerchief out of his pocket. It had made Jamie's eyes water, and it bloodied his nose a little bit. Gray apologizes to Tarleton, and then he notices that 12 Trees' boot heel had made a tear in the cloth at the table. Tarleton is trying to figure out what to say and do. He's stumbling over his words. He's horrified, and he's helpless. He doesn't even know what to make of what just happened. Can you imagine overhearing something like that? That's quite a row in a public place. And John at first thinks that Jamie has now regained his self-possession, but he really never lost it after all. And Jamie hands back the handkerchief, folded nicely, back to Tarleton. He spoke so in an effort to discredit Colonel Grey's testimony. For what I said to him is the truth. He's a Jacobite traitor and deeply involved both in Siverly's treason and in his death. Well, Tarleton now coughs and turns a helpless face toward Grey, who shrugs at him. But Jamie is doing this knowing that people are listening. They're witnesses. So whatever 12 Trees said to John, calling him a sodomite, Jamie's playing to the crowd. He knows they're there. And he intends to have them whisper and buzz. So he's playing the room. This is him understanding politics and marketing. He gets it. And then Jamie just says to Tarleton, "Your servant, sir." And he bows and goes out. And Jamie goes up to the stairs, ignoring the eyes fixed upon him. Tarleton, still at a loss, coughs again, that I imagine very uncomfortable. And he asks John if he would like to have brandy with him in the library so they can speak further. And he agrees. And they go to have a drink or two. Well, it turns out that John drank most of the bottle, and other friends of John's joined them. Little by little, they came in to show their support, and there's cake and sandwiches and napkins crumpled when they're done. Started out casually, and then to loud express shocks at 12 Trees' effrontery. What a great word is effrontery. Insolent or impertinent behavior. The synonyms for effrontery are impudence, impertinence, cheek, insolence, cockiness, audacity, temerity, presumption, nerve, gall, shamelessness, impoliteness, disrespect, bad manners, and possibly more. So, generally, the group surrounding John now thinks perhaps 12 Trees might be mad. But nobody spoke of what Jamie said. He knows nobody believes 12 Trees to be mad. But the ball is rolling in John's favor. What Jamie did worked. Now, we know that 12 Trees probably has his supporters too. There might be less, and they'd retreated to a smoking room, but they're still there. And then he reflects on how the club is not immune to controversy, but the staff did not like when arguments led to broken furniture. Yeah, it's not very civilized, is it? But all John can think is, what the devil made him do it? He wasn't talking about 12 Trees, though. He wonders why Jamie did it. He wanted to go find him and ask him. He knows the news of this would spread quickly. It wouldn't be possible to eradicate it. He wonders what he's going to tell Hal. He takes his leave of Tarleton and the other company and went upstairs to the bedroom. He sees that the door to Jamie's room is open, and there's a male servant sweeping out ashes from the hearth, but the room was empty. John inquires as to where Jamie is, and he's told he's gone out and didn't say where. So John goes to his own room, lays on the bed, and promptly falls asleep. When he woke an hour later, the first thing he thought was, I called him a murderer. I called him a murderer. He called me a sodomite, and yet it's Fraser he called out. Why? It's because Jamie accused him point blank and publicly of treason. He had to challenge it. The statement couldn't stand in the air. Murder could be an insult, but an accusation of treason? Wow. That's a rough one. And this is coming from somebody who has been convicted of treason. It's probably not something he would say lightly. And Jamie's a commanding presence. What he didn't understand is why Jamie would make the accusation now and in such a public way. So John got up and used the chamber pot, splashed his face, drank water. It was almost evening. It was nearly dark, and he could smell all the beautiful foods from downstairs. Crumpets and sardines and cucumber sandwiches and lemon sponge and ham. Oh, he was suddenly starving. He wanted to go down and have his tea instantly. But there's something else he wanted more than food, and clarity was one. Like Jamie, John's a thinker. And he thinks he can't have done it for me. And it bothers him, and he wishes Jamie would have done it for him. He wishes that Jamie would have come to his defense and being called a sodomite. He doesn't think he's going to be able to understand what Jamie's motives are without asking him. He's pretty sure he knows where Jamie's gone. And there weren't many places he could go. Justice, maybe. Maybe that's at the core of this. He thinks there's a good many different ways to achieve that state of affairs. Statute, court-martial, duello, murder. So he sat on the bed, and he thought for a few more moments. Then he rang for paper and ink. He wrote a note without sealing it, gave it to the servant with instructions for delivery. Now he feels better. He took some action. He smoothed his crumpled neckcloth and went in search of fried sardines. Who was that note to? What was it for? I think he was challenging 12 Trees to a duel. Maybe? What do you think? And I love that John still has to struggle with Jamie's motives. He wants it to be personal. But again, they're not on equal footing. But he wants it to be personal. John needs a boyfriend. A big, strapping, strong, smart, savvy boyfriend. That's not Jamie Fraser. I still think he's using Jamie as a shield to other things, that he focuses on what he can't have instead of looking for what he can. Yes, I know it's very desperate and difficult for somebody who is a homosexual in that time frame. But the places existed. They did. So the next great event Has to be contending with 12 trees and to see where that goes. And gosh, I hope Jamie finds Quinn okay. Please send me your comments. You can email to contact@adramaofoutlander.com. You can call into the listener line at 719-425-9444. You can leave a comment when I make the post. How do you find A Drama of Outlander? On Facebook. We have a Drama of Outlander page. There's a private A Drama of Outlander group you have to ask to join. It's searchable. That's only for listeners. On Twitter and Instagram, it's Dram of Outlander. And on Wednesday nights, we have the hashtag ADoO Twitter chat every single week, unless I'm catching a baby. And we'll be covering these two chapters, 29 and 30, next Wednesday night. Come and join in, even if you don't know how to use Twitter. All you have to do is have an account and then type in hashtag ADoO. Click on it and you can see all the tweets. And even if you don't want to type anything in or respond, you can see what everybody else is saying about the content, about the podcast. And we're actually share more than that. We talk about life and family and all those things too. So it's a really bonding thing to do. How do you support the podcast? Well, for one, sharing the podcast, telling other people about it, directing them to the website or to the social media places. You can, of course, financially support the podcast by sending a one-time offering, which you can email me or leave me a voice message for, or you can go to patreon.com/adramaofoutlander and give a monthly offering of the size that you would desire. And you support the podcast by downloading it every week and listening. And if you listen through iTunes, or if you have iTunes, please go to iTunes and leave a review for me. It will help other people find me and bring me up in the ranks. And talk to each other on the social media pages. There's a lot of good conversation that goes on. I have really great listeners, really smart, respectful, insightful people. And there's very little drama in the A Drama of Outlander zone. And I rarely ever have to actually put my moderator hat on in any location. And I'm so thankful for that. I appreciate you all more than I can say. Because in many other Outlander-inspired locations, I do see a lot of drama. And it's very difficult to navigate. So until next time, Slàinte mhath.